What is going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadskii, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video. And this is going to be a little bit of an extension from the video that I uploaded yesterday, talking about what I think the best teams currently right now are in Pirate Rumble in terms of attacking teams. Now, this is a video that I actually haven't done yet, surprisingly, was just talking about PvP rare recruits in general and which one of them, or which ones of them, are the best ones that you should be looking out for if you do choose to summon on a Pirate Rumble Sugofest banner. So shout out once again to OPTC-tierlist.com. Link to it is down below in the video description. You can go over there and create all your own tier lists, share them with your friends and stuff like that. But of course, these are all the characters that are currently available on Global. If you do compare and contrast the two lists of characters that we have available for Global and Japan in terms of these PvP rare recruits, we're only missing 2 characters. So it's not going to be too much different from Japan. I guess it really depends on the meta at the time, which is definitely going to influence some of the choices in where I rank certain characters here, of course. Also, Legend Enel V2 is not on this list as well, but just know Legend Enel V2 is probably probably is the best one you could possibly pull. But there's still some amazing characters in this particular list, okay? So let's go ahead, start things off with Otama. Otama's pretty interesting. She was obviously the first character to come out, or the one that a lot of people really wanted to get. Her passive is pretty bad in my opinion, like crit up to fighter free spirit, and like the free spirit teams obviously are centered around crit, but this character's passive is basically whatever. The main reason why you run it is because it's a low CT character that gives really good recovery to your team. She's relatively easy to get rainbowed out. You can just chuck her on nearly any team because her passive just doesn't really mean much, but you can chuck her on just about any team and she's going to give you really good healing. I'm going to put her on tier 1. Very good on really bulky defensive teams, like just having that character available either to come in on the bench or be on the front lines. Usually it's better to have her on the bench, and then when one of your characters go down, Otama comes in, has a really low CT, heals your characters back. It's a pretty good character for sure. So the next one is Jozu. Now Jozu is also pretty cool. Definitely when PvP was in the full swing of things for when Global came out. When Global had like the pre or like the post patch characters, actually, when Pirate Rumble first came out, the Int team was the best team in the game for sure at that time, and Jozu is one of the best characters to have. So he has speed up for Int, and for the first 30 seconds level 1 defense up. Like, it's just okay. You can see it's definitely power crept from what we see these days, and especially on the 31 CT, he does fixed damage in a small forward range and level 3 crit up to Int. He's still pretty good. Like, the fixed damage is super nice. I don't think it's as useful as Otama. I might move him down depending on where we rank the other characters at the moment, but he's definitely good because Int are a pretty solid team. What's his class? He's Powerhouse something. Fighter, I'm going to say? Yeah, Powerhouse Fighter. Yeah, so he does kind of work well with Int. It would have been nice if he was Driven Powerhouse, but obviously, you know, not too many Driven Jozus, but still, like, a pretty good character. I think it's kind of fair to leave him in tier 2 for now. Let's have a look at Neko. Now, Neko, I know that he's based on Striker and Cerebral, so he says for the first 40 seconds, level 5 defense to Striker and Cerebral, which is good, and when there's 60 seconds or less remaining, level 6 attack up to those 2 classes instead. Okay, so defensive in the first bit, and then more offensive in the second half of the match, basically. 31 CT does 15% health cut to all enemies in a medium range, level 2 defense up, level 4 attack up. For a 31 CT, that is a little high. If this was like around 25-ish, that would definitely make him much better. And just looking in PvP sort of things, Striker and Cerebral are... they're okay defensively. You can run characters such as like Shanks Crew, V2 Rayleigh, Sanji Pudding, for example. Like, that could see some play. I'm going to leave him in tier 2 for now. I think it's not a terrible unit, but he's definitely nowhere near the best. Very good in defensive teams, not very good on the offensive style. His CT is too high for what it provides, but very good defensively. Really good character you could potentially bring on the bench. He comes in, he does attack and defense increasing with his special. He health cuts enemies, which is nice. But let's have a look at Sanji next. So Sanji, being strength centric, is a little difficult because strength is pretty bad in Pirate Rumble in general. But let's have a look, right? Level 5 attack up to strength. Actually, some of these might not be fully updated. I'm pretty sure some of these will not going to be fully updated, but just know that Sanji in PvP, if you're building a strength team, you probably want Sanji on your team. But the thing is like, strength is so bad in Pirate Rumble, like, I'd probably just leave him in tier 3. I think he's probably goes in tier 2 because he actually is pretty good as a unit, but just... the thing is the meta doesn't really revolve around this character at all, unfortunately. The next one is Stussy, though. Now, a lot of people like to talk up this character, and I really don't understand it because, in my eyes, I think this character is honestly bad. Right, so we can just go ahead and have a look at this, right? Now, all of her effects in her passive are only for the first 30 seconds, speed, defense, and attack. While that is good, it's only for the first 30 seconds. So after that point, like, her passive is nullified, and it is completely useless, right? So you definitely want her on the front lines. But then her special 30 CT, which is pretty high, right? So you definitely need CT increases on your team, otherwise like this is nearly useless. 3 times attack to 1 enemy in a small sideways range, and level 4 attack up to quick characters for 24 seconds. I just don't think this character is that useful. I mean, some people are going to disagree with my opinion on that, and of course this is my opinion. I really do not like this character. I think this character is honestly like a tier 3 or a tier 4, probably tier 3. I just do not see the value in this character that much. I would much rather run so many other characters over Stussy, and while yes, this character does a lot of damage on her attack, basically after she launches one special, and after those first 30 seconds, she's useless. She's just dead weight. I'd much rather run an Ivankov or a Bellamy to debuff enemies continuously over the time of the match that will actually help me out compared to a character like this. Again, that's my opinion, but it is what it is. But now we move on to Whitebeard, and without a doubt, Whitebeard is probably the best. I mean, let's face it, Whitebeard probably is the best PvP character to have released. I mean, the fact that he's a self-sufficient passive that works with himself, so you can inject him into nearly any team, and he's going to be such a huge asset to that team. The fact that when he launches his special, he does defense reduction, then he hits, and he targets quite a lot of enemies as well. And then, adding on top of that, if there's powerhouse enemies, he can special bind them as well. So, I think Whitebeard at the moment is probably the best. I mean, there's still a couple of other good characters we need to talk about as well, but Whitebeard is a phenomenal PvP rare recruit character. So moving on now to Kalgara and Noland. Kalgara and Noland are pretty okay. I would probably rank them in like, they're probably tier 2, tier 1-ish. The thing about them is like, again, they're very similar to Whitebeard in the fact that his passive is like self-sufficient, like it works with himself, which is good. You can put him on a lot of different teams like Whitebeard. But the thing about Kalgara and Noland is that they only target one enemy when they launch their attack. However, when they do launch their attack, it's a pretty hard hit. Like, they hit that one enemy ridiculously hard, but they only target that one enemy, which, you know, if you're running into a really difficult team and you potentially have this guy on the bench, he comes in, he's not going to be that savior for your team. Whereas Whitebeard, so many times in PvP, I've been so happy to have Whitebeard on my team because he'll come in last minute and he'll help me win the match. He'll help me get the flow back on my side. He'll swing the momentum into my favor, whereas Kalgara and Noland just don't do that. So that's the downside there. So I probably would rank them in tier 1. If they targeted 2 enemies, I think it would help them out a lot because, you know, it's 2 characters in one. It would have made sense if it targeted 2 characters. But still, he's a cool character. I definitely think Whitebeard is a lot better though. So following that, we have Conus. Now Conus, probably in the same level as Stussy, where Conus has a passive and a special that is mainly around debuffing the enemy. So you can see here that for the first 40 seconds, CT down to Psi and level 2 defense up to Int. So that's, again, it's a little bit too niche. And then her special, 28 CT, defense down, speed down, and guard down, and then 100% chance to silence and special bind Psi character. So, you know, if you are building an Int-based team, or, you know, whatever, Int or Shooter or Free Spirit team, and you have Conus on your team against a Psi team, yeah, that is pretty good. But again, it's a little too niche, and it's not like it's a unit you can put on a lot of teams. It's going to help you out. But if you are up against Psi specifically, then yeah, Conus is going to be a pretty good option for that. Now, I've got Kaku up next, and I think Kaku's actually like a low-key, pretty good unit here. So he will go ahead and give level 5 health, and he does debuffing to Dex, and for the first 40 seconds, level 2 defense down to all enemies again. So if you're running him on the actual main team, that's nice. But again, a lot of the times, these PvP rare recruits are going to be characters you have on your back line. There are a couple of them that are so good, you want them on your main line, but a lot of them will be bench units anyway. 25 CT's respectable, and level 5 defense down to Dex, and then he does 2.2 times his attack in a medium sideways range. So that is ridiculously hard, man. On a relatively low cooldown, like, I think Kaku's actually kind of nice. I think I would probably put him in tier 1. I think he's a super solid unit. He's also a slasher, so he works well with those slasher teams. I'm pretty sure he's a slasher, right? I'm almost certain he is. Yeah, slasher powerhouse, yeah. So he works well with the slasher teams, of course, and he's, again, one of those units you can put on a lot of teams, and he'll just help you out doing a lot of damage to the enemy. Frankie, though, man, Frankie's probably one of the worst ones, unfortunately. So he's a Dex, powerhouse free spirit, And his passive, I mean, level 5 attack and level 6 speed to dex. I mean, that's not bad. But then his special, man, his special is so bad. 35 CT, level 3 damage over time to all enemies in a large range for 44 seconds. Damage over time has never been a meta-defining trait. So the fact that he does that really hurts. And then level 2 defense down and level 7 speed down to quick. So I guess if you are building some type of weird dex team to counter the quick meta as of right now on global, I mean, maybe, but again, on a 35 CT, I can't really recommend running this unit like at all. I think this character is like probably the worst in the game. I know that Leo also isn't that great. I'll have to double check and see what he does, but this guy, quick strike of free spirit, at least he's quick, right? So that's kind of nice. So he gives level 5 health and crit up to quick, and then 30-second CT, 60% chance for paralysis, inflict level 10 defense down to one enemy with the highest defense, and level 7 attack up to the highest attack character for 29 seconds. Yeah, there's no way you're running this guy on your team when there's so many other better quick units. Like, these two characters are just awful, man. Like, honestly, I think Frankie's a little bit better. Leo is awful. There is no way you're running, like, a unit that debuffs one enemy, buffs one character on your team. It's just too niche, way too niche, dude. And then we've got Oz, which, again, is another one of these characters that was interesting, but not super amazing either, right? So for Oz, his passive is level 5 guard down to all enemies, and for the first 40 seconds, level 10 crit, level 2 attack to end. Like, on paper, it seems interesting, right? 18-second cooldown, 35% health cut to one enemy with the highest defense, and then level 10 attack up to one crew member with the highest attack. Again, one thing to one enemy, one thing to your crewmate. Like, it's just not that useful. I mean, 18-second cooldown is a little bit better than what Leo's 30-second cooldown, so this is going to be launching, you know, 2, 3, maybe even 4 times per run if he stays alive that long. So that is at least interesting, but again, it's a character that you're just never really going to use. He's definitely like a really low tier unit. But then we move on to some, like, essentially all the characters from here on out are very, very good. So you can see we kind of slumped down during that little period there. But now we've got Sober Mask. I believe Sober Mask, is Sober Mask stuff actually on here? I don't think it is, no. But just know that Sober Mask is, wait, did that target the wrong guy? Did it actually go to the wrong character? Yeah, it did. Okay, anyways, Sober Mask is very good. Sober Mask, it has a really good special that does, I think it's 2 times his attack in a medium range, and then if there's 40 seconds or less, he does an additional 2 times attack in a large range. So the really good thing about Sanji is you can have him on your bench, and then he can come in very late game and absolutely dominate. He can sweep up the competition with a really hard-hitting special at the end. And his passive buffs Dex as well, so he's semi-self-sufficient, so you can kind of just inject him into other teams. Very similar to Whitebeard. He's definitely one of the best units in the game in Pirate Rumble for sure in terms of PvP rare recruits. He's really, really nice to have. And he actually kind of works very similarly to Super Type Zoro. If you guys have Super Type Zoro, you can build a really interesting team with that, having Super Type Zoro on the bench and this guy on the bench, both of which have specials that do more damage the less time that's remaining. So during the late game, you can have Sober Mask and Zoro come up and do so much damage with those guys. So you can build an interesting dex team with those types of units, right? Very, very good. But next we've got Trafalgar Law. This guy on paper, again, is another good unit. He's a slasher unit, and he has a strength-centric effect, right? For the first 40 seconds, HP and defense to strength, which is good because that's one of the big downsides of strength in Pirate Rumble, is they're not very good defensively in almost any capacity. So the fact that they have a character that does this is good. And then if you've got slashers on your team, they get an attack buff as well. So that's kind of nice. So 27-second cooldown special, 2 times attack in a large radial range, and then level 6 attack and speed up to strength. On paper, very, very good. However, as we've said a little bit earlier with Sanji, is that strength-centric stuff isn't super useful because strength is not that good in Pirate Rumble, but on paper, still very good. I would almost say he's like a top-tier unit. It's just the problem that, you know, if you're running a slasher team, for example, you can still kind of inject him into a slasher team, but the problem there is that, you know, you've got Wano Law, who's probably the better choice in terms of running on a team. The good thing about it, though, is that this Law has a much lower cost, so you can potentially put this Law on the team instead and then run something else. That is an option, but it's still a really good unit on paper for your strength-centric teams. Can potentially use him on slasher teams, but you know what? After thinking about that, like, there's just no way that he's on the same level as the other two. He has to go in a tier lower. He just has to. Like, Whitebeard and Sober Mask, I use almost on every team just because of their amazing usefulness on benches, but Law's not a character I'm using actively, unfortunately, but like on paper, he's super, super good though. You got to keep that in mind. If Strength ever gets some super crazy support on Rumble, this is going to be like a must-have for your Strength teams, right? And now we've got Cavendish. Cavendish is a character that you're not really going to be using too often offensively, but he's a very good defensive unit. So you're going to be mainly running him on a Dex team. He's a slasher driven as well. And then his passive, for the first 40 seconds, level 7 crit down to all enemies, which is okay, I guess. Not super useful. And then level 4 defense to Dex, and level 5 guard up for Dex. So this is very good defensively. And then 28-second cooldown, level 4 defense to one crew member with the lowest defense, and then 3 times attack to one enemy with the lowest defense. So as we've already established with Leo and Oars, characters that, you know, debuff one enemy and then buff one character in your crewmate aren't very good. But you got to remember here that he's doing this to low defense enemies, giving them level 4 defense lowering, and then he targets that enemy with the lowest defense for 3 times his attack. Don't sleep on that. 3 times his attack is ridiculous. And like, yeah, as we've already established, that only targeting one character isn't super good, but you got to think defensively. Having this passive and then having a special like this can help you win games, just knocking out characters, lowering their defense and doing so much damage towards them. Defensively wise, this character is going to be good, but offensively, no, this character is not a character you probably want to be running at all. I guess you could run some weird Dex offensive team, but Dex offensively has never been good, and probably won't be good for a while. But I think this character is definitely not bad at all. I probably wouldn't put him in a top tier here because these are characters you're likely going to be using in an offensive team. These ones are definitely more defensive, especially like this Neko and this Cavendish. Both of these characters are very good defensively, not very so much on the offensive side of things. So next we've got Rebecca. Now Rebecca is so good. If you're running a mono side team, you want this character on your team, especially if you were lucky enough to pull an L. Like, just have a look at how good this passive is. Level 6 attack, level 2 defense, level 5 health to side characters. No time restriction. It's 100% always active. Like, this passive is the best passive we've seen on a PvP rare recruit thus far. It's so good. And then 22-second cooldown is so low. 2 times attack to 2 enemies. Level 3 defense down in a large range for 20 seconds. And then level 5 defense down additionally to slasher characters. I mean, like, just on paper, top tier unit, no doubt. Such a good unit. And then we can finish off this list here with Shiriu, which we've already talked about a little bit on the channel because he's obviously the newest character that just came out. He's also really, really good because Quick is the best team on Pirate Rumble, and this guy just complements them so well, giving level 6 attack and health for the first 30 seconds, increasing their CT. Specifically, that's going to be good for Magellan, launching his special a lot faster, which gives haste to another character to make them launch faster. Just in theory and in practice, it's a good passive. And then 28-second CT, 2 times attack to all enemies at a large radial range. And if it's in the first 30 seconds, he does an additional 2,000 fixed damage to any strength unit. So basically, just think of him as he just does 2 times attack. And then if they happen to have any strength enemies, strength characters on their team, then you're just going to do so much more damage towards them as well. Shiriu, as well, through no surprise, is also going to be one of the top tier characters in the game. So I don't think it's any surprise that, yeah, these are definitely the top 4 best PvP rare recruit characters in the game. And then the ones in tier 1 are characters that are somewhat useful here and there, probably not going to be put on every single team that you have, but they're still going to be good characters to have nonetheless. Tier 2 characters are characters that you're not going to be using as often at all, and some of them are very good defensively. And then tier 3 and below are characters that you're probably not going to use that often. And as I said, I'm not the biggest fan of Stussy. I know a lot of people out there are. Stussy, for a lot of people, are probably going to be in tier 2 or even tier 1. I don't see Stussy being in anyone's tier 0 at all, but Stussy, not my personal favorite, but I can understand how people might like this character. But I think definitely Conus, Frankie, Oars, and Leo are characters you're basically never going to see. I mean, some people are still going to put Frankie because he has somewhat a dex boosting passive, but not really going to see too much play. But hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight when you're pulling on a PvP banner as terms of the characters that you should be looking out for. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video today, and if you guys did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like. And if you want to stay up to date with all the content that I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. But on that, guys, I will see you guys within the next video.